All right. Of all the cults of the ancient Greeks and Romans, the mysteries of Eleusis continue to, I would have to say, perplex and enchant us. For while intended to be secretive, having these profound inner mysteries with things performed and things shown and things said, only privy to the initiated, this mystery cult was also very public, with grand public celebrations and mystery religions, mystery cults, whatever you wish to call them. They always raise an eyebrow or two when brought up within both public and academic contexts. Today, we're going to investigate one of these mystery systems. Of course, as I said before, we have to understand the goddess Demeter. Now, she is a deity that is devoted to fertility, and more specifically, the grain harvest. Because of her agricultural associations, Demeter was viewed as a civilizing as well as a cultivating force. For when you think of it, in order to farm, one must rearrange the natural world, making new rules and regulations in the process so that the planting and harvesting are successful. To do so, the goddess of fertility must be respected, worshipped, and heeded, for she knew best, they believed, the cycles of the land, and if she was not listened to, they believed that disasters could befall them. Humans then must enter into a kind of a partnership, a pact with nature, to be permitted to reap her benefits. Now, Demeter personified that nature. Because of this fact, Demeter received the epithet Thesmophoria. Now, Thesmophoria, the word thesmos means divine order or unwritten law, and phoros means bringer or bearer. Together, the idea is conveyed that Demeter is the divine law bringer to those who seek to have her permission as they attempt to tame and cultivate her natural offerings. As Thesmophoria, Demeter also maintains the divine balance between nature itself, which often pivots between life and death, for she is connected to the seasons too, the life of spring and summer, the gradual decay of autumn, and the death of winter. Those who farm must then plant in autumn, but wait through the winter to have a harvest in spring, as Demeter regulates the seasons. Now, the Orphic hymn number 40, a dedicated to Demeter, written between the 3rd century BCE and the 2nd century CE, declares her in praise. It goes as follows, and I'm going to go through this because we want to understand the characteristics of who Demeter is from the perspective of those people at that time. It says, "To Demeter, Eleusinia, O universal mother, Dale famed, august, the source of wealth, the various named, great nurse, all bounteous, blessed and divine, who joyest in peace to nourish corn in thine goddess of seed, of fruit abundant, fair harvest and threshing are thy constant care, lovely, delightful queen, by all desired, who dwells in Eleusis' holy vales retired, nurse of all mortals, whose mind first plowed oxen to the yoke confined, and gave to men what nature wants require, with plenteous means of bliss, which all desire." And of course, it goes on, it says that rejoice in the reaper's sickles, kind, whose nature's lucid, earthy, pure we find, prolific, venerable, nurse divine. There's a lot with nursing there, which is kind of rather fascinating. She is the one who is connected to a car with dragon serpents yoked as in thine a guide, orgies singing around, and bright goddess come with summer riches increase. So get the idea. This is definitely a fertility goddess, but not just a fertility goddess, but a goddess that's connected to the ecstatic states within nature. Okay, that's ecstatic state. So it is she is the mystikos. She is the one who is connected to the mysteries of life. Now, as for the origins of Demeter, recent scholarship asserts that Demeter is indeed a Minoan goddess. As a result of recent decipherment of some of the Minoan language, which is called Linear A. Now, we can't read it all, hardly any of it, but we can read some words. Of course, Linear A, as opposed to Linear B, which is an Indo-European language. Linear A is not Indo-European. Now, the Minoan civilization, of course, was very sophisticated and even a leisure culture at time that produced so many beautiful works. They thrived from 2700 to 1450 BCE, and it was centered on Crete. This is important. But having much of the Aegean and the western coast of Anatolia as their own. The Minoans are unique for many reasons. First, as evident from archaeological discoveries, their beliefs centered around predominantly goddesses, with only a few gods even identified so far. Second, the excavation of their cities have revealed that wealth was more equally distributed, with even the most poor living in houses with 3 to 4 rooms from an archaeological perspective. Third, the Minoans were more egalitarian, with women and men portrayed as occupying the same occupations, right down to merchants. And when it comes to religious occupations, here women dominated. Fourth, their religion focused on ecstatic experiences with their goddesses within caves and upon mountain summits. This ecstatic kind of religion of the Minoans will later be transferred over to Demeter and, of course, to the Eleusinian Mysteries. So we're seeing where some of these ideas are coming from in a contextual sense. Fifth, they were prosperous enough to have leisure time, pursuing all kinds of fun activities and sports. Sixth, they did not focus upon military power. We have discovered that many of the cities did not have walls around it at first. But ultimately, unfortunately, the Minoan civilization, because of the explosion of Thera, was fatally crippled. And now the warlike Mycenaeans take over. But let's take a look at the Linear A tablets. The 3 Linear A tablets list this goddess as Demeter. Demeter. In fact, we find 3. 2 of these inscriptions were discovered at Acrocori in Crete, and she's specifically Demeter. And 1 is discovered at Kythera, an island lying off the Peloponnese Peninsula. So now I want to say this: we only have 1,400 Minoan inscribed clay tablet fragments, and also on metal and stone objects. So not that many, but they reveal 78 hieroglyphical signs forming about 1,025 words. The good news is that 15 of these Minoan hieroglyphic signs and 45 of these words can be read because we have Luwian equivalents, counterparts. Luwian, of course, is an Indo-European language that is related to ancient Hittites. And I know all about the Luwians, that's another talk. And so as a result of these loan words, which is inclusive because Demeter is an Indo-European word that becomes incorporated within Linear A, which is a non-Indo-European language. As a result of that, we can see that these texts do have this word. Now, we take a look. Much of the deciphered words and compound words reveal lists of commodities and places, but we do know that when it comes to Demeter, we do know that she is already worshipped at this time. And there seems to be an equivalent Minoan goddess that's also mentioned in these records, not only Demeter, but also Asasara, and they seem to be related. Now, as I said before, let's take a look at the word Demeter, because Demeter then will go in from Linear A into Linear B, which is the Mycenaeans. Now, the Mycenaeans, they're a little more different. The Mycenaeans, these are warlike Indo-Europeans who are considered the first Greeks. They're very much like pirates in many ways. Again, we have to tell this backstory because otherwise she's not going to make much sense. All right. And they thrived from 1,600 to 1,100 BCE. And we take a look, and we realize that we learned that the word mater, so we have Demeter. Now, mater means mother. Mater means mother. It is a Indo-European word. So mater, so you got mater, mutter, mother, right? So what does the da mean? And of course, later on, the da goes to de, which becomes gay, which is of course the root for the word Gaia. And so therefore, de means earth. Therefore, Demeter means earth mother. And so that's the derivation. I do want to make it very clear that she's also known as Ida Mater. So it could be Ida Mater, which is important because what will happen is the spouse of Demeter, you have a derivative of the word pos, and so it will become Pos-Ida, from which root we get Poseidon. So therefore, Poseidon becomes the spouse of the earth mother. And that's a derivation of that word. That's very important when it comes to what we're going to be talking about later on. So there you have that. So in various Mycenaean tablets, specifically, there is the reference to Potnea of the grain, or Potnea does mean literally mistress, making her mistress of the grain. And this Potnea is also related to Demeter. Desponea is a derivative of that. And so it means the lady, or it could also mean the mistress. So the mistress of the grain. We're going to come across this word again, Desponea, later on within the context of Eleusis. So just keep that in mind. Now, during the Mycenaean period, Potnea of the grain, or mistress of the grain, was, as I said before, indeed Demeter. But she was directly tied to the god Poseidon, called the earth shaker, in Linear B tablets from Pylos and Mycenae. While immediately we tend to think of Poseidon as in charge of the sea, during the Mycenaean era, he possessed underworld and chthonic associations, much like Demeter. In fact, he is often called Wanax, the Mycenaean word for king of the underworld. In another underworld context, Poseidon is referred to as Ensidon, and is connected with a cave cult at Eleusis in Crete, and is also connected with the goddess Eileithyia, who is the goddess of childbirth, who, as we see later on, is directly connected to the Demeter at Eleusis. Now, but we do find an association of both Demeter and Persephone in relation to Poseidon in Mycenaean tablets, king of the underworld. In fact, as opposed to Hades. So early on, it's not Hades who is the king of the underworld, it is Poseidon. In fact, there is a list of sacrificial goods from Pylos, and it reveals that its destination was the place of the two queens and Poseidon, and also to the two queens and the king. And so many believe that the two queens refer to Demeter, as well as her daughter Persephone. Now, following the Mycenaean era, those living in Arcadia in Greece retained the legend of Demeter's connections to Poseidon, where together they have a child named Desponea, the mistress. Here, while Poseidon is still understood as a chthonic godlike, like the Mycenaeans, this god is now specifically the personification of the river spirit of the underworld. So Poseidon has changed a little bit, still an underworld deity, but connected to underground waters. Also at Arcadia, he is already connected to horses, so known as Poseidon Hippos. Now, according to the early Arcadian tale, Poseidon, in the form of a stallion, pursues the mare, Demeter, but she runs and hides with the horses of a certain Ochias, king of Ochian, which is a region of Arcadia, he was happened to be also the son of Apollo. But even amongst all the horses, the true divinity of Demeter could not be hidden. And so the stallion finds her, catches her, and forces himself upon her. And so because of this moment with the stallion, Demeter was literally the one who is the furious, Demeter Irenaeus. And of course, Irenaeus is another word for furies, wishing for vengeance for her defilement. Eventually, according to the Arcadian story, Demeter's anger subsides and she went to purify herself at the Latin River, cleansing herself of the desire for vengeance, and so being called Demeter Lausia, or the bathed Demeter. Of course, Demeter was now pregnant, right? This is how she becomes pregnant, according to the Arcadian legend, and so bore Thesmophoria. Yes, Thesmophoria, the same name we encountered earlier in the Mycenaean tablets, which is, of course, the mistress. So the true name of Demeter's daughter was not to be revealed beyond the Arcadian mysteries. Now, because Poseidon was in stallion form, and she happened to be a mare when this all happened, when she became pregnant, Demeter also bore a horse too, a stallion by the name of Orion. So together, the three are associated with springs, for, springs come from the underground areas, and wild animals. Now, the worship of Demeter, as the mare continued in Arcadia into the Roman period with her image, which was a wooden form, at a place known as Phegalia, described by Pausanias in the 2nd century CE. It mentions the fact that she is seated on a rock and was like a woman in all respects, save for her head. She had the head and hair of a horse, and serpents and other beasts grew out of her head. Her chiton reached right to her feet, and she held a dolphin in one hand and a dove in the other. Now, this is fascinating. So you can see this early image of Demeter having a horse head, right? And having, of course, the image of the dove and dolphin, each representing her connections to the air and the water. So these mysteries, it's fascinating that we have found in Arcadia that the main temple of Thesmophoria, next to Ocasian, was directly next to a temple dedicated to Hecate, which emphasized her chthonic connections. Now, once inside, the first image to catch the eye was tied to fate, which, of course, now Demeter and Thesmophoria were shown together within this context. And there were certain mysteries that were associated. So what I do, again, find this fascinating, that there is this early cult, early veneration of Demeter, but most people just don't know about it in Arcadia. Okay, so now let's move on again, because we're a little bit behind. So I'm going to skip a few sections here. But don't worry, we'll have that later on, maybe for the questions. So, but I want to get to it, to the main part here. Okay. Now, Demeter's, let's talk about Demeter. Let's just talk about her and who she is and her story, the famous story that needs to be told. Here it goes. Now, central to the story of Demeter was, of course, her connection to her daughter Persephone, which, granted, has many versions. The Greeks often viewed Demeter as the sister of the brother Zeus, Poseidon, Hades. So basically, the gods over the sky, ocean, and underworld, respectively. According to one popular version, Zeus was actually the father of her daughter Persephone. Hesiod writes in his Theogony in the 7th century BCE that he, Zeus, came to the bed of all-nourishing Demeter, and she bare white-armed Persephone, whom Aidoneus carried off from her mother. but why Zeus gave her to him. One day, the beautiful Persephone, who is also called Kor, which simply means maiden, was visiting one of her favorite places for flowers, just below the slopes of Mount Etna in Sicily. And a beautiful narcissus caught her eye. And so she searched out to pluck it. But as Persephone pulled the flower, the entire earth began to unravel at her feet. Meanwhile, Artemis, Aphrodite, and Athena, who were also longed for this flower excursion, suddenly noticed that Persephone was missing. Demeter panicked, and they began to frantically search for her missing daughter. The Homeric hymn, too, to Demeter states that she rent the covering upon her divine hair with her dear hands. Her dark cloak she cast down from both her shoulders. Queenly Dale wandered over the earth with flaming torches in her hand. During the initial 9 days of her search, Demeter found no clue of her daughter's possible whereabouts. Sometimes with frustration and anger, she torched the earth. She refused to drink any nectar and eat any ambrosia or even bathe. Callimachus says of this period of endless searching, he says, "Lady, how were thy feet able to carry thee onto the west, unto the Melanoi, and where the golden apples are? You did not drink, nor did you eat during that time, nor did you wash. 3 times did you cross the Echinus, 3 times did you sit yourself on the ground beside the fountain of Kenokos," which is, by the way, at Eleusis, "parched and without drinking, and did not eat nor wash." So already she is crossing the same area where Eleusis is at, but she's not stopping. She's traveling back and forth. But after these 9 days, Hecate appeared before Demeter, telling her that all she knew was something that bad happened to her, hearing her cries, but not seeing where she went. Demeter realized that of all the gods, Helios, the deity of the sun, was the one to ask, because he sees all from that sky position so high up there. And Helios did indeed know where she went, but more importantly, he knew why. Helios told Demeter that Zeus promised Hades, lord of the underworld, their daughter's hand in marriage without even consulting her. Worse still, Helios added that he rather thought it was a good match. Demeter was now full of sorrow, being so separated from her daughter, and she also became absent-minded. For example, during one banquet of the gods, she accidentally ate Pelops' shoulder. Who's Pelops? Well, Pelops was a prince that grew up in the court of King Tantalus, a man that was beloved by the gods. Now, Tantalus happened to be one of the sons of Zeus and was one of his father's favorites. And so he often was invited up to Mount Olympus, at which point he oftentimes stole the ambrosia, nectar of the gods, to give it to his friends down below. And he decided that he's going to invite them, the gods, to come down and to visit him in his palace. But what he did is he took his son, chopped him in little pieces, and brought it before the gods for them to feed upon, because apparently this is his sense of humor. Well, the gods immediately knew, except for Demeter. She was so much in grief over what happened to her daughter, she actually partook and ate part of Pelops' shoulder. And they are, no, don't do that. So, of course, what happens is that the gods are pretty upset at Tantalus, and he gets the tantalizing punishment that he deserves so much. He's placed in a place where there's a fruit, and every time that he reaches for that fruit, it lifts up, and it becomes parched, and he's sitting in the water, and every time he tries to drink from the water below, it starts to drain out. So that's what he gets as his punishment. Meanwhile, Pelops is put all back together again, except for his shoulder because, well, Demeter ate his shoulder. So he was given an ivory one in its place. And it's said that the descendants of Pelops after this, you could tell they're descendants because their shoulder was always ivory white. I always love stories like that, but there you go. But this shows the extent of the grief of Demeter. By the way, many people believe that Pelops is the root for the word Peloponnese, as in the Peloponnese Peninsula. So Demeter's depression began to affect her work of providing her vital life force, sustenance for trees. So fruit was not happening. Vegetation was not growing. The fields were dying. The soil became barren, and famine began to spread. Demeter herself was not eating either, as I mentioned, and she turned herself into a weak, old Cretan woman, roaming the earth until she reached Attica. And tired and thirsty, this old woman arrives to get something to drink. An onlooker by the name of Ascalbus observed her and began to make fun of Demeter, saying that she needed a bathtub rather than a cup to satisfy her thirst. Angry, Demeter turned him into a gecko. Finally, Demeter had enough. And so as the old Cretan woman, she sat by the well and began to cry. Her tears brought 4 daughters of the chieftain Celsus out of the house, and they proceeded to comfort her. Demeter spins this rather pathetic yarn to gain their sympathy, telling about how she was abducted by pirates and barely escaped. She says, "Dear children, whosoever you are of mortal kind, salutations. I will tell you my story, for it is not unseemly, since you ask for me to tell you the truth. Dasso is my name, for it was given me by my stately mother, and now I am come from Crete over the sea wide's back, not willingly, but force of strength against my liking. Pirate men brought me thence. They afterwards put me with their swift craft to Thoricus," and she continues to tell her story. And you're thinking to yourself, well, this is interesting. It's an interesting story. There's a historical core in the story. Historical core. Get a core? Okay. Anyway, she's the old Cretan woman. As you know, the center of the Minoan civilization is Crete. And she is an old woman representing this ancient level of beliefs. Also, we take a look at this, and you have this mention of pirates taking her away. Once again, the Mycenaeans, after the Minoans, were viewed as pirates. So you have this conversation, in a sense, the story, this narrative telling of the fact that these Mycenaeans are taking this cult of the Minoan cult of Demeter, of the old woman, and bringing it to Attica, to Greece, right? She calls herself Doso. That's important, which means I will give. Why is that important? Because it's close to the word eleutho, which means to bring. And that's connected to the Minoan goddess Aletheia, her name meaning the bringer. And by the way, we will see that Aletheia is directly connected to Eleusis as well, by name. So she is Demeter Aletheia. Isn't this fascinating? So once again, another Minoan connection to the Eleusinian rites earlier on. Okay, so next, the 3 sisters who were there introduce her to their mother, Maternera, and what happens there is, long story, really short, but we have echoes of this in other places. She likes the family, she gets along with them, and she becomes their nurse. And there's echoes there of another story of Isis, right? And Isis, Osiris, is floated up and goes off to Byblos, right, in his coffin, and his coffin is incorporated into one of the pillars of this king's palace, and Isis comes there, and she arrives, and she's mourning the loss of her husband, and she becomes, once again, invited in, and she becomes a nurse for the child, the queen's child. Well, it's the same kind of situation here, not a queen, but Demeter now becomes a nurse taking care of a baby, and exactly the same as the story of Isis. Isis wants to give the baby eternal life, and so what she does is burn parts of him at night in the strange alchemical kind of process. And according to the Demeter story, she does the same thing. She tries to burn the baby in this alchemical process in order to give her immortality. There's a mirror effect, right? And then in both cases, with Isis as well as Demeter, somebody walks in, the mom walks in and goes, "What are you doing?" And at that point in both stories, both goddesses reveal themselves. So there is an absolute direct parallel in both of these stories. And again, I find that fascinating. So when it is found out, right, she declares, "Lo, I am Demeter, who has a share of honor and is the greatest. Help and cause of joy to the undying gods and mortal man." And she changed her statue and her looks, thrusting old age away from her. Beauty spread round about her, and a lovely fragrance was wafted from her sweet-smelling robes, and from the divine body of the goddess a light shone afar, while golden tresses spread down over her shoulders, so that the strong house was filled with brightness as with lightning. And so she went out from that place, the palace. And so, wow, so she does this revelation. What's important for the Eleusinian Mysteries is the fact that her revelation, this epiphany, includes a great light. And we know that from the mysteries, that a great light that represents possibly her is towards the end. And that's a big deal. All right, so what happens, of course, is that Demeter instructs them to build a temple to her, where she would reveal her sacred rites. And this is at Eleusis, so obviously this would be connected to the Eleusinian Mysteries. But Demeter's mood did not improve. She fell further into depression, with the earth still unable to offer food, and humanity unable to feed itself, not knowing the secret of agriculture, which, by the way, becomes part of her mysteries, right? So Zeus finally realizes, he's got to placate his sister wife. And so he makes an agreement with Hades, and it's a part-time agreement. It's like, okay, well, it's supposed to be a full-time. We'll see what happens. Because there's Persephone. Persephone, she was observing a fast the entire time that she was in the underworld, but she was so upset that she broke her fast at the last moment and had a pomegranate seed. Well, some stories have that she had 6 pomegranate seeds. Well, whatever. So she realized she made a mistake, but now a part of her is connected to the underworld. So there has to be this deal. And the deal will be that she'll spend half the year with Hades, her husband, and the other half with Demeter, her mother. So this is the deal. So 6 months in one place, 6 months in the other. Well, Demeter says basically, hey, during the 6 months that she's with her husband, I'm not going to be productive. I'm not going to do anything to the earth. And so therefore we got the autumn and the winter. And then as soon as daughter comes back, she gets excited. And this is where you get the spring and the summer. So this is kind of how this operates. There's another version I want to bring up, and that version goes as follows, is that actually it's 4 months for each. So 4 months with mom, 4 months with husband, and 4 months on her own. I like that one better. She gets some free time. That's much needed, but anyway. So Persephone, she's so happy, and she introduces then this new art form of working with the earth, this craft that's known as agriculture. That's right. She's going, I'm going to tell you how to maintain food constantly. And so, yeah, she's the one who introduces agriculture at this point. Some stories have it as Celsus learning it, and some versions have it that it's his son, Triptolemus, who is taught the art of agriculture to share with whoever would listen. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, so of course, obviously Persephone is another important component to the Eleusinian Mysteries. So I'm remiss not to mention her a little bit more. But I won't go too much. I will say again that her name, Persephata, is often translated as female thresher of corn. Perso, related to the Sanskrit parsa, meaning sheaf of corn. The second is kind of Proto-Indo-European. Seems to be to strike, so to strike. So the striker, right? The striker of the grain. And that makes a lot of sense. As far as the origins of Persephone are concerned, she's connected to all of these vegetative goddesses throughout Anatolia and Syria, and Mesopotamia. And many have variants of this abduction story. So there's echoes here. The typical cycle has that Persephone gives birth to the god of the new year, and then becomes her lover, and then who impregnates her. And then after he dies, she gives birth to him again the next year. So you're going to see this. And this is, of course, the explanation for fertility, right? We see even depictions of possibly Persephone in a Minoan context. There's this Minoan plate that's really cool from the old palace period at Phaistos. It shows a goddess and is portrayed as growing directly out of the ground, which is also very flower-like in appearance, having no arms and legs, with dancing girls surrounding them and her, and she's also amongst the flowers. So is this a representation of the ascent of Persephone? Is it connected to the picking of the flower story, right? Remember the picking of the flower when she gets put into the underground? Is this a reference to that? We don't know. We do know that ancient legends of Persephone are connected to also her as a goddess of death as well. So we do see this, which is interesting. In fact, the pieces of this story is preserved by Hyginus, as well as Fabulae, written it's basically 2nd century CE. It says, when Kore, or Persephone, was crossing a certain river, she saw some clay mud. She took it up thoughtfully and began to fashion a man. While she was pondering on what she had done, Zeus came up. Kore asked him to give the image life, and Zeus readily granted this. When Kore wanted to give it her name, Zeus forbade it and said that his name should be given to it. But while they were disputing about the name, Gaia, or Demeter, arose and said that it should have her name, since she had given her own body. So they went to Kronos, or Saturnus, as the judge. He seemed to have decided for them, Jupiter or Jove, since you gave him life, then you control his fate, and let her, Persephone, receive his body after death, right? Since Kore fashioned him. Let her, Gaia, or Demeter, possess him as long as he lives. But since there is controversy about his name, let him become called Homo, since it seems to be made from hummus. I love that's kind of a fun story. So what happens is Persephone becomes this underworld deity of death, even from the perspective of the Greeks and the Romans. In the Orphic myths, while Zeus is often seen as the father of Persephone, it is also true that he later seduces her in the form of a serpent and makes her pregnant with Dionysus. So this enters in because Dionysus has a large part in the Eleusinian Mysteries as well. So there you have it. And so she becomes pregnant with Dionysus, whom Zeus wishes to make the king of heaven. But due to the intrigues of Hera, of course, Dionysus is cut up and eaten up by the Titans. But then, of course, is the resurrection story. So let's go to Eleusis. Okay, let's go here. Let's talk about it. Oh, before we go there, I want to stop off in one other place. There's one other important Demeter ritual that we need to go over, and that's called the Thesmophoria. The Thesmophoria. Now, the Thesmophoria was celebrated for about 3 days. And so roughly around the 11th and 13th of Piscean, this is October, November, with this festival observed from mainland Greece, especially Athens, to the Ionian coast being very popular, also at Ephesus, on the Black Sea, and so forth. So the Thesmophoria was exclusively reserved for women, and only married women who actually left their households for the duration of the festivities, setting up temporary shelters to occupy, which are located outside of the respective cities where the celebrations were held. For those that celebrated the Thesmophoria, the first day was dedicated to the journey to the designated place for the celebration, known as the day of Anadas, meaning the day of the way up, because they ascended to the hill. As they went to the designated location, they carried many things with them. Lucian states what they take with them. Unspeakable sacred things are made of dough and carried up, models of a snake and male parts. They also take pine branches. So they're going up the hill and they're taking up some images of phallus there, phalli. Once there, the women set up their shelters called the skene and chose their sleep partners. So you got to have a sleep buddy. Aristophanes talks about that. Now they had to sleep directly on the ground with no extra comforts. They also covered themselves up with plants that were supposed to dull any sexual appetites. So it was very uncomfortable. You have your buddy, but you're laying directly on the ground and you're covering yourself with all these plants. 2 women were in charge of organizing the women, and they're called the Arcosai, and they keep track also of the supplies. On the evening of the first day, under the light of the flickering torches, what happens is the phalli, the male images, the fir cones, and the snake images, which are all connected to fertility, were thrown into a chasm called a megara. Now, remnants of these megara have survived all about the Greek East, with some quite extensive, forming literal underground chambers as opposed to just simple pits. A good example of such a megara survives at a Demeter sanctuary at Priene along the Ionian coast. This Priene megara was rectangular in shape, with part of it above ground with a gable and so forth. And here, what will happen is that they will put various offerings into this particular place, especially piglets. Yeah, and so what they will do is they will throw these piglets into these chasms dedicated to Demeter and Kore. And what they will do is they will fetch them a year later. And these special women are the ones who fetch it a year later, and they're decomposing by this point 3 years later. And then what they do is they bury them, these decomposing pigs and pine cones and so forth, and they mix them with seeds, and then they bury them again. And this is used as fertility magic. So, and this is how that works. Okay. So the next day is called the Nesteria. It was reserved for grieving, including an all-day fast that continued until the celebration of the third day. You can't eat anything. Well, there's only one thing you can eat, which I think is interesting. You can eat pomegranate seeds, but that's it. Nothing else. So the day was dedicated to the grief that Demeter had over what happened to her daughter. No garlands are to be worn and at all. Also, it was traditional for women to exchange insults on that day. And so this is a really bad day. They're not eating except for pomegranate seeds, and they're exchanging insults. Well, but the idea is to break the mood up. I guess apparently insulting is a good way to break the mood up. In fact, there's a story about this connected to it, this traditional trait of insults. The story goes, the Homeric hymn states as follows: "A long time she sat upon the stool without speaking because of her sorrow, and greeted no one by word or by sign, but rested, never smiling, and tasted neither food nor drink, because she pined with longing for her deep-bosomed daughter, until careful Iamba, who pleased her moods in aftertime also, moved the holy lady with many a quip and jest to smile and laugh and cheer her heart." And so this is supposed to cheer you up, to shock you. By the way, Iamba is connected to another lady by the name of Bobo, who does the same kind of thing in the Eleusinian Mysteries. See, again, another connection. At the conclusion of the third day, towards the evening, you have what's called the Kalagenia, which means the goddess of the beautiful birth, which is a sumptuous feast for all. They had different kinds of meat. And so there you have it. So this was Thesmophoria was a great time, a great celebration amongst these women. Now, before we discuss the Eleusinian Mysteries, we're almost there. Although we do have a very strong context, and that was important to understand how they worked. I would just want to talk about quickly about mystery cults in general. Mystery cults in general, they originate as early as the 6th century BCE. Most of the mystery cults proper, although most of them date from Alexander the Great, but the Eleusinian Mysteries appear to be one of the earliest of the mystery cults. The second thing about mystery cults is that they have the veneer of the exotic, of the foreign, in their appearance. They will often appear as originating from Egypt or Anatolia or even Persia, but in essence, they are more foreign in spirit than in actuality. For in basic construction, they still have a Greek heart, resembling, more of the Greek ideas of what an exotic idea should be like. The third, mystery cults are spiritual in nature, acknowledging the existence of the individual and our unique soul, that our unique soul is journeying to some location. And through the mysteries, one can focus on the nature of the soul and can change it and even to make it better. And so there's a higher ethic in connection with the soul, with the mystery cults. Fourth, without doubt, mystery cults are religions of salvation, focusing upon a positive fate for the soul, for the person, both in this immediate life and the next. In many ways, the goal of personal salvation has certain parallels to Christianity. Because of this fact, many Romans believed that Christianity was just another mystery cult. In fact, Christians like Justin Martyr admitted that there were many similarities, right? But yet they just said the devil was counterfeiting it. Fifth, mystery cults apply to the idea of mystery in connection to an experience involving each and every member of the belief system. So there you have this. And you have this concept of personal transformation, but you also have what's called status dramatization. And so what happens is you go through some kind of drama, maybe even some kind of theater, again, Eleusinian Mysteries, to demonstrate this change, this transformation. Six, of course, mystery cults are a form of personalized religion in the ancient world. Very much it was public religion that was the focus. Now suddenly the personal aspect is important. It doesn't matter about, if you have to follow, Athena in Athens or Artemis in Ephesus. The focus is on, what do you personally believe? That's important for yourself, not for your family, not for your city, not for your station in life. It goes beyond that, right? Seventh, mystery cults are votive religions. What I mean by that is are related to like votive, the idea is you give something in order to, as an exchange. In a sense, you make a vow. In fact, I think the better way to explain it is to show you it. So this right here is a votive lamp. Can you see it? And this is Dionysus. And you can see here, you can see the oil goes in there, and you can see where the lip was and so forth. So the idea is this, is that I want to make sure that I get safely to my port of destination. And I'm really insecure about the seas in front of me. So what I want to do is I'm going to light one of these votive lamps before an image. In this case, it would be Dionysus, but it could be Demeter or whatever god or goddess that you worship, and asking, as a petition, please, can you help me? Right. And then, of course, after that happens, you make a vow. And when you get to the other side, right, you light another one of these in Thanksgiving as an offering. But sometimes what you have to do is an exchange. Kind of like, well, if you do this for me, I will give you this. I will shave my head. I will spend 5 days in fasting. I will. And so you make these kinds of promises, but this is part of it. I do have another one. Here's a larger one. So these votives. So yeah, they come in all different shapes and sizes. And so there you go. Okay, so we find these all over, even in Eleusis. Okay, so here we go. So we're ready. We're at Eleusis. And don't worry, I'm going to give you because I know we got all these delays. I'm going to go ahead and give you the expected amount of time because you paid for it. Okay, so no worries. So here we go. So one of the oldest mystery cults, of course, is the mysteries at Eleusis. And it traces its origins all the way back to 1500 BCE. But with that said, most of the fixtures of what we described as a mystery cult just now were not yet part of this belief system at this early date. The Eleusinian Mysteries are usually placed in the plural, as I said, because there are more than one mystery. Now, typically, in classical mythology, the Greeks tend to emphasize the viral potency and power of the male Olympians, while female goddesses are often subordinated by stories that disassociate them from their mothers and place their emergence into the world, their immediate origins from male deities, right? We see this all the time, so Demeter and Hera and Hestia were swallowed by their father immediately after birth, right? Aphrodite was born, at least according to Hesiod's account, out of the semen that surrounded her father's severed genitals, right? And so you have these stories, and Athena coming out of the head of Zeus, so I mean, good grief. So yet, what I find is interesting is that right next to Athens, right there, nearby, you have the center of such a strong female-oriented belief system. And that tells you how early it is, but how deeply entrenched it is within the culture of that time to survive all these layers of patriarchy. It really is an interesting anomaly. Okay, so there you have it. Now, what happens is, let's look at the name Eleusis. Okay, the Demeter called Eleusis is very ancient indeed. Eleusis itself, the word is pre-Greek, and it's not even the Mycenaean word, so it's not Indo-European. So it does go back to the time of the Minoans, or those who are living in that area. The root of Eleusis does have the same root as Elysium, or Elysium, right? Which is where the righteous deceased go in the underworld. There is a commonality there. So there it is. But Eleusis also connects to the word Aletheia. Aletheia. So that's spelled Eileithya. This is that Minoan goddess again. So Eleusis has a connection to this word Aletheia, who in many ways is an aspect of Demeter. And as we know very strongly, this is a Minoan goddess, right? We know this for a fact. And it's interesting because later on they will tie this word Aletheia to the word Elethu, which happens to be Indo-European Greek verb, which means to bring or bringer. And so you'll have, in fact, Pindar from the 6th century uses the word Elethu in a sense of more than just bringing something indefinite, but in bringing the idea of freedom. The word Aletheia in ancient Cretan, which is connected to ancient Minoan, has the same connotation, the idea of bringing freedom. Aletheia then could be understood as a goddess who brings about freedom. And that may be significant because, in a sense, Demeter of Eleusis was believed to bestow freedom, but in this case, freedom from death in the afterlife, right? Oh, wow, this is kind of a big deal. It sure is. The Greek Homeric hymn to Demeter makes it very clear that the cult of Demeter at Eleusis originally came from the island of Crete. Very clear, all right? And again, a connection to Aletheia. We know that Aletheia, just a little bit, is connected to a place in Crete known as Minos, which is the harbor town for Kenosis. And we know this directly from even one Linear B Mycenaean tablet specifically mentions Aletheia in connection to this particular cave. It says, Minissus, 1 jar of honey to Aletheia, 1 jar of honey to all of the gods, unquote. You also have the mention of Aletheia as Aletheia is also mentioned to be connected to this cave as her birthplace. And we see this actually, Odysseus mentions this. So it's fascinating. Now, the worship of Aletheia passed from the Minoans to the Indo-European Mycenaeans, and she became an important goddess to them. She's connected, she had sacred shrines, shrines dedicated in places like Lato and Eleuthera, and a sacred cave at Anatus, and so forth. During the Greek Dark Ages, however, the goddess finds herself more and more connected to being the goddess that looks over the pains of birth. And so she becomes more and more a birth goddess, or a goddess that's connected to infants. This idea, by the way, is not lost, because you remember the story of Demeter, and she is designated as a nurse. Remember this? For that baby, even though she's trying to burn parts of it to give immortality, you can see directly this ancient connection. All these ideas come together. So there you have it. Now, I would like to go more on that, but that's for another time, another topic. But you can see there's a clear connection. So what does archaeology reveal of the cult of Demeter at Eleusis? Well, here we go. During the Middle Hellenic period, this is 18th to the 17th centuries, a small village consisting of crude stone tools covered the entire slope of the hill at Eleusis, but there's no evidence of the cult at this time. However, by the early Mycenaean period, between 1580 and 1500, the place that would later on be occupied by the mystery sanctuary was left empty. There's this empty place. So you have all around it, you have dwelling places, and there's this empty field. And so many people, many scholars have said that this is probably an outdoor sacred space. Now, the first structure was a single room, and its roof supported by two inner columns and opened up on a projecting platform with steps to one side. It appears as early as the 15th century BCE. By the late Hellenic period, between 1400 to 1100, this edifice was extended by 3 rooms, situated between the gate leading to the courtyard and the main building. And so you already, this early, it is a sacred spot. Wow, yeah, this is fun, right? Now, although the cult of Eleusinian Demeter is perceived as an autochthonic element of Greek culture, once again, I have to remind you, it is specifically thought of as coming from Crete. All right, so now, as far as ownership of the sacred property and those in charge of the cultic rites, these mysteries, it was first under a local family, and for a little while, and actually continued all the way to the Roman time. Therefore, the Eleusinian Mysteries, while local in the sense that one had to come to Eleusis in order to receive initiation, eventually became more and more connected to the nearby town of Athens, and Athens then will claim this region as their own. Okay, now much like Christianity, later on, women, slaves, and foreigners were admitted into the Eleusinian Mysteries, pushing the envelope a little even further in a cultural sense. You're going to have women and men were mixed freely. They were not separated from one another, which is very unusual, right? In fact, what I find is interesting is that men and women both were taking on the role of Demeter, looking for Persephone, looking for, her daughter. So men are taking on the role of Demeter as well as women in this portrayal, which is fascinating. Some scholars had said, oh, well, maybe it's originally a mystery like the other one that's connected to only women, and gradually men entered, but there doesn't seem to be enough support for that. Now the problem is, there's a few problems here, but therefore, you think, well, it's open to all. But the problem is it's expensive. It can be very expensive. You see, the thing is that you're supposed to go, to 2 of these celebrations, and then there's a final third one that follows a year later. That means that you're going to have to journey, you're going to have to travel from wherever you're at and pay the expenses to get there, and then you have to pay the expenses for all the stuff that you have to have with you. Because you have to buy some accessories as well as sacrifices. So there's no package deals here, or maybe there was, but it gets a little difficult. Right? For example, there's an inscription that sets the fee for a slave at 15 drachmae, which is, by the way, that's pretty expensive to pay. But if you have the money, then you can do it, right? Now, the Athenians considered the role in the Eleusinian Mysteries one of their greatest of honors. Isocrates says as follows. He says, when Demeter came to our land, in her wandering after the rape of Kor, and being moved to kindness towards our ancestors by service, which may not be told save to her initiates, gave these 2 gifts, the greatest in the world, the fruits of the earth, which have enabled us to rise above the life of the beasts, and the holy rite, which inspires in those who partake of it sweeter hopes regarding both the end of life and all eternity. Our city was not only so beloved of the gods, but also devoted to mankind that, having been endowed with these great blessings, she did not begrudge them to the rest of the world, but share with all men that she had received. The mystic rite we continue even now, each year, to reveal to the initiates. And as for the fruits of the earth, our city has, in a word, instructed the world in their uses, their cultivation, and the benefits derived from them. There's a lot of civic pride there, right? So she's done all this. Now, the lesser mysteries, here we go. The lesser mystery celebrations at Eleusis took place. And according to Clement of Alexandria, he says as follows, thence the prophecies and oracles are spoken in enigmas. This is during these lesser mysteries. And the mysteries are not exhibited to all and sundry, but only after certain purifications and previous instructions. It is not then without reason that in the mysteries that obtained amongst the Greeks, lustrations hold the first place. So this is a purification process. You have to be purified to be able to be ready for your full initiation into these mysteries that, of course, obviously permeate through death. Now, there's purification going on. You're cleansing your virtues, in a sense, through these purifications, so trying to free yourself of the bondage of matter and ascending beyond reach, in a sense, through the sacred bathing, right, process. But the lesser mysteries were also somewhat pleasant and exciting, where initiates sang various hymns to Demeter and felt cleansed through the waters of Eleusis. Whether one was sprinkled or immersed in these waters is open to debate, although a relief discovered in the riverbed may offer a clue. It represents Hercules accompanied by Hermes, both bearing the characteristic pictures coming to be initiated. And so in this sense, it would be the pouring of the water upon the head. Diodorus provides a direct reference to why Hercules was included in the purification rites. And basically, Demeter is said to institute these lesser mysteries in honor of Heracles or Hercules, in order that she might purify him of his guilt that he had incurred in the slaughter of the centaurs. So Hercules gets kind of thrown into this tale. Now, the public character of the greater mysteries is beyond debate and constituted a very popular festival in Athens, as well as at Eleusis. The sacred announcement of these mysteries is preserved by Aristophanes, and I'm going to go ahead and give you that sacred pronouncement. Hekos, hekos, este, bebla, all evil thoughts and profane be still. Far hence from our choirs depart, who knows not well what the mystics tell, or is not wholly impure of heart. I charge them once, I charge them twice, I charge them thrice, that they draw not nigh to the sacred dance of the mystic choir. Wow, even that's quite a pronouncement. Even Nero took those acclamations to heart. When he was in Greece, when he heard about this pronouncement, he got out of the way as fast as he could. Now, these greater mysteries start on September 14th. And here the holy objects, hiera, were brought to the city in large round baskets called kistae. The most important part of the Athenian celebration was on the 16th, when, following the cry, "To the sea, O Mystae," each of these mystics took a bath in the sea together with their piglet. The pig was the principal sacrifice for purification. See, it was believed that the blood of a pig was capable of purifying whatever was impure in humans. And so what happens is that you go into the sea with your piglet, and after the bath, at that point, after, in this case, it could be, again, the sprinkling, or could be the dunking, but you have this baptismal rite. And what happens is whatever evil and whatever impurity that you have with this baptism is transferred on to this pig. And then the pig, after that, is ritually sacrificed. And so your impurities die with it. There is so many connections you can see, even when it comes to Christian baptism, this idea of a substitute and so forth. Okay. Now, we do have some evidence of what it looked like. There's something called the Love Teli urn. This is a white marble funerary urn that was discovered at the Columbarium on the Esquiline Hill in Rome. It portrays Hercules offering a pig in connection to this ritual. And you see there's a low altar that is depicted. And it was intended for these chthonic deities. So you have this low altar that's there, which is in contrast to the higher altar dedicated to the Olympians. And this was set aside. And you can see here, following, so we see that it is a chthonic sacrifice. Following the offering of the pig, the initiate offered what are called peloni, which basically means they are round cakes made from barley as well as honey. So you have some cakes. After this, the priest poured a libation to both Demeter and Persephone. At this point, there's evidence that poppies were offered up at this time also, and many scholars believe that the poppies may have even been smoked in a ritualistic sense. So there you have it. Clement of Alexandria makes it clear that also during this time, they had cheese, they had pomegranates, as well as the spherical cakes that I just mentioned. Now, the next 2 days, the 17th and 18th, were to be occupied with the preparation for the great journey ahead, as well as instruction. As the initiates listen to the sacred story of Demeter, they are enthralled and going through this process of mourning and being upset about the abduction of Persephone. And in order to make this even more real to them, as you listen to these stories, you had to sit there on a ram's fleece, veiled. What? You had to wear a veil to blacken out things. Yeah. So as you hear the story, there's like this, almost like this mourning veil over you, which also means that you can't see, you only hear what is going on. Wow, that's pretty powerful, right? So they listen to the story. Now, as they're listening and they have this veil in front of them, a torch was now passed before their faces, as well as a winnowing fan. I told you I'm going to give you details. The winnowing fan, which is a lycnon, is a type of basket used to separate the wheat from the chaff. So its connection, obviously, to Demeter and Persephone, who's the goddess of grain, is pretty obvious. The action can be described as a type of sympathetic magic. The wheat is purified, and as the wheat is purified, so is the one going through this initiation, right? And so this is also a symbol dedicated to Dionysus too, which I find, again, is fascinating. Now, the great procession now to Eleusis occurs on the 19th of September, with the crowd of initiates shouting, "Yaka, oh Yaka," as they dance along the route in ecstasy. We'll talk more about that ecstasy in a little bit. Iacchus was another name, by the way, for Dionysus. So you do have this sense of ecstasy going on. According to the Eleusinian version of the story, Dionysus was the son of Zeus and Demeter. In the context of these mysteries, he was the torchbearer for the procession to Eleusis. So in this sense, the god of ecstasy and wine, of nature's revelry, right, was leading those wishing to be initiated into a place that's outside the norm, beyond the civilized establishment, into this liminal space. At times, Iacchus was understood to be the sacred herald of the divine child of goddess. And other times, he was indeed the sacred child. So it's sometimes, who's the sacred child? Is it Core, Persephone, or is it Dionysus? Okay. Of course, technically, that would make them brother and sister, would it not? Okay. They often declared him as the light bringer star of our nocturnal rite. Then they sang out, oh, Iacchus, come to tread this verdant level, come to dance in mystic revel, come whilst round thy forehead hurtles many a wreath of fruitful myrtles, come with wild and saucy paces, mingling our joyous dance, pure and holy, which embraces all the charms of all the graces when the mystic choirs advance. Aristophanes, of course, said that. Wow. Those ready for the journey were crowned with myrtle, and many also carried the Bacchus made of myrtle branches tied with wool. I'm telling you, I'm giving you details. The procession now headed for an ancient statue of Iacchus, Dionysus himself, tied with wool. Which I think is interesting. The procession then, there's a carving on the torch as well. His head was crowned with a wreath of myrtle. Moving along the sacred way, along the foothills of Parnus, they reached the Reti River, and Pausanias notes, who's from the 2nd century, he says, what are called the Reti only resembles rivers in that they flow, for their water is salt. One might suppose that they flow underground from the Chalcidian Rippus, falling into the lower sea. The Reti are said to be sacred to the maid and Demeter, and the priests alone are allowed to catch the fish in them. The Reti were of old, as I am apprised, the boundary between the Eleusinians and the rest of the Athenians. So they're now crossing this boundary into the Eleusinian territory, even though Athens claims it all, right? So when the procession reached this boundary, there was a little bit of grotesque buffoonery going on. Somebody known as a geophysormai was enacted along the bridges. Basically, what this is, it's a masked figure that made fun of and made obscene gestures to those passing mystics, right? After enjoying the frivolity and crossing the first bridge, they drank what's called the Kikion. And what is Kikion? Well, Kikion, although there's 2 places, some say they drank it here, and there's evidence for that. And some people say that they drank it up at Eleusis right after to break their fast. Some scholars say they drank it twice, and you'll see why in a minute. Especially in connection with Dionysus, you'll see why. You see, it's an ancient drink. Sometimes it has Permanian wine in it, but usually it has barley and water and honey, a little pennyroyal in it, so a little spearmint was in there, right? But the problem is the ergot. You're going to have a fungus that could grow from this grain because it was fermented. And this fungus obviously has, it's like LSD, right? The alkaloids, right? So it's mind altering. So they may be drinking from this, and already their consciousness is being a little bit affected. So anyway, so they crossed the first bridge, they drank. Next, they crossed over a second but smaller bridge where they had to walk single file. making it really impossible for carts to cross, right? After exiting on the other side of the bridge, the candidates were met by a priest who asked them to give a special password. Many believe that it was here that they pronounced the famous assertion, although some say it's later on, so this is contested. And the famous assertion is as follows: I have fasted, I have drunk the kikon, I have taken things out of the big basket, and after performing a rite, put them in the little basket, whence I put them back in the big basket. And so many will say, well, this pertains to up at Eleusis. Others will say, no, this is part of the greater mysteries that happened before they even got up there. Otherwise, why is there, you have to go through initiation password sequence. So, yeah. So, hey, or could be both, when in doubt, just say yes. Well, many believe that it was here that there was a ceremony that is called the Crocosis took place, connected to the legendary Crocos, the first dweller of the territory, and the special family that was chosen by Demeter. Here, those of his descendants tied a woolen ribbon of saffron color around the right hand and the left leg of each of the Mystae. Isn't that interesting, right? But still, there's another odd ritual that occurred here, where there was a courtesan appeared. Now, this ritual started out with a certain, her name is Phryne, a famous courtesan from the 4th century, who exhibited her beautiful body before all. Athenaeus writes as follows: at the great assembly of the Eleusinian and at the festival of Poseidon, in full sight of the whole Greek world, she removed only her cloak and let down her long hair before stepping into the water. Another woman by the name of Antiope did the same, again mentioned by Athenaeus. And of course, he says, nor did the son of Mene, Mycenaean, master of the Greeks, cause Antiope to go without her meed of honor. And she, besides Eleusis' strand, expounded to the initiates the loud sacred voice of mystic oracles, as she duly escorted the priests through the Rarian plain to honor Demeter, and she is known even in Hades. So you possibly had, well, you did have a courtesan, a lady, apparently not wearing anything, being a part of this. Of course, at this point, if they've already had a bit of that drink, their minds are a little bit altered. Everybody's minds are a little bit altered. Okay. The celebration procession now traveled deep into the night. It just keeps on going, but the enthusiasm never waned. In fact, Euripides talks about the enthusiasm of going on, well, how long? 14 miles. You're walking 14 miles. So, by the time you're getting to Eleusis, it is already dark out and you have torches. So Euripides, he describes this procession. Can you imagine? And he goes as follows. It says, daughter of Demeter, goddess of highways, queen as thou art of haunting powers of darkness, I blush for that god of song. If this stranger is to witness the torch dance that heralds in the 20th dawn around Callichorus' fair springs, a sleepless rotary in midnight revels, what time the starlit firmament of Zeus, the moon, and Nereus' 50 daughters that trip it lightly o'er the sea and the eternal river's tide, join the dance in honor of the maiden with the crown of gold and her majestic mother. That's beautiful. I love it. So there you have it. So, okay, 14 miles. It's dark. So they're holding torches now. As they arrived, they encountered the complex and Eleusis of various temples and the Hall of Mysteries, known as the Telesterium, along with the sacred house reserved for the high priestess and her attendant priestesses of Demeter, who would later play a role in the Demeter and Kore sacred pageant. These priestesses commanded the utmost respect. In fact, they were called the Pangeas, which means all holy, and were blessed with touching the Hiera, like the priestesses of Artemis Ephesia. They were called Melissae, or bees, because they swore to be virgins and so separate themselves from the realm of men. The Hierophant, of course, was in charge of the mysteries. Another sacred official was called the Dodokos, or torchbearer, from, of course, the original family again. So the original family is still very much a part of these rituals. Well, after all that, you get the rest. So resting, the 20th is a day of rest, but also observing a fast. I know, it's like you just got there, you can rest, but you got to fast. So they prepared themselves for the mysteries. So what will happen? Actually, I should say this: before they go on their fast, they are given food. They're just going to die, right? So you do have that there, and then after that point, no food for the rest of the day. Okay, this of course is supposed to represent Persephone's fast in the underworld. You're thinking, but they just fast earlier down the hill in Athens. Yeah, well, you get to fast again for a day. So there you have it. So then let's take a look. Oh, by the way, I do want to mention. No, that's okay. So then let's talk about the telesterion, the structure. It differed in its ground plan from a regular Greek temple because it had to accommodate such a large crowd of initiates at its services. It measures 54 by 52 meters with 22 columns supporting the roof and having tiers of 8 stone steps along the walls. And so most likely it was planned for people to stand rather than sit. So they had to stand up, just like you had when it came to Christian initiates had to stand up. Callimachus, refers to this restriction while discussing the baskets being offered to Demeter, as well as blessings she provides for the harvest of wheat. So we have this offering. In fact, I actually have what they say as they make this offering of here, so of wheat. So why don't I tell you what they say? So it goes as follows: "Sing ye maidens, and ye mothers, say with them, Demeter, great hail, lady of much bounty, of many measure of corn. And as the 4 white-haired horses convey the basket," I'm still quoting, "so unto us will the great goddess of wide dominion come, bringing white spring and white harvest and winter and autumn, and keep us to another year. And as unsandaled and with hair unbound, we walk the city." So apparently they're a little bit wild there, or let their hair down. "So shall we have foot and head unharmed forever." So it's good luck to have your hair unbound during this period of time, during this offering. "And as the van bearers bear vans," basically what does this mean? These are skull-shaped baskets used for offering first fruits to the gods. They're called vans, right? They're not, not a van. "Full of gold, so we get gold unstinted. Far as the city chambers, let the uninitiated follow, but the initiated even unto the very shrine of the goddess, as many as are under 60 years. But show that are heavy, and she that stretches her hand to Aletheia, and she that is in pain sufficient, it is that they go so far as their knees are able, and to them Deo," again, "shall give all things overflowing, even as they come unto her temple." Well, now you have a direct reference again, as I promised you, to Aletheia, and also reference to Deo, which of course is a derivative of that word Aletheia, to bring. The idea of bringing freedom is right there. This is good. You're learning things, right? This is good, right? It's right there. So you see the connection to this ancient Minoan goddess. Yeah, it's in the hymn. Yeah, this sure is, and it's seen as one. Okay, so now at this point, we take a look. The Hierophant is there. It's interesting. We take a look. The sacred room it actually covers a natural rock formation, which remained unaltered throughout the history of the shrine. Unlike many shrines devoted to chthonic deities or mysteries, there was no true interest to the netherworld. No, needs to be portrayed in the sacred drama. There is, of course, a great fire under which the Hierophant would officiate, obviously, and this fire would grow up, would build up, and go through an opening in the sky. So there was an opening in a telesterion, kind of a skylight, and for the flames to go up and the smoke to go out. The Eleusinian rites, the Eleusinian rites of initiation, I got to drink some water here, included things enacted, dromena, things said, logomena, and things shown, degmena. All three activities were sealed from non-initiates and common knowledge by a strict vow of silence. So you can't talk about these things. Whatever you do, don't give away the secret. You don't want people to know. You know, you tell people that, and you know what's going to happen? People are going to leak secrets. It's just people's nature. It happens because you got too many people there. So, what are? Let's go through this right here. So I told you about the various things, right? So let's talk about the things enacted. Concerning the things enacted, it's connected to a sacred pageant related to the story of Demeter's loss and rediscovery of her beloved daughter, Kor. So it is, we don't know all the details. We just know that the story was depicted. It was shown, right, in some way. We do have some aspects, some little leaks here and there of some of the details, and we'll talk about those details in a few seconds. So there you have it. But obviously, you're going to have the rape of Persephone, and you're going to have Demeter's search that will be depicted. Some people are arguing, where is it held? Is it at the Telesterion, or is it the nearby Plutonium? There's a cave near the initiation hall there. So we don't know exactly. But there is some kind of reenactment of the myth. Other activities are better left open to speculation, since Christian authors, Clement of Alexandria, Hippolytus of Rome, and Arnobius suggest various rites, and they all claim it's intimacy. They all have the idea that these rites were sexual in nature in some way, but people like Marvin Meyer, who's my mentor, says we got to be very careful about this. Is this an orgy or not? Because they could be describing the orgies that occurred dedicated to Demeter in the mysteries at Alexandria in Egypt, rather than the ones in Eleusis, because we're not sure. Although these orgies connect to this time as well. Now, as may be reconstructed from various sources, we're not done yet, the great cry is Hi K, meaning reign, conceive. Hippolytus say this. So they declare reign, conceive, which of course is a collective invocation for the sky to emit rain and to the earth to become fruitful. Perhaps accompanied with maybe a ritual as a pouring of water into the ground, an act symbolizing the intercourse of the deities and the impregnation of Mother Nature, possibly, right? But you still have this declaration, right? One of these dramatic recreations, here's another leak, was a myth that was described by Clement of Alexandria. And basically, he does firmly attribute this to the Eleusinian Mysteries, and involves a rather odd woman by the name of Balbu. Balbu. So here he goes. I'm quoting him. Balbu, having received Demeter as a guest, offers her a draught of wine and a meal. She declines to take it because obviously Demeter is going through the search for her daughter. She's depressed, and so she declines this wine. She declines to take it, being unwilling to drink it on account of her mourning. Babu is deeply hurt, thinking she has been slighted, and thereupon uncovers her secret parts and exhibits them to the goddess. Demeter is pleased at the sight, and now at last receives the drought, delighted with the spectacle. These are the secret mysteries of the Athenians, unquote, from Clement of Alexandria. So he's disapproving of this. So here you have a Babu's offering her wine. Demeter says, I just can't, I'm too depressed. And then she does this kind of obscene act, or reveals herself, her mystery, so to speak, and Demeter is pleased. Of course, there's more to that, showing her feminine parts, and you can see that has to do again with this ancient sacred hieros gamos kind of magical marriage kind of conception. Anyway, the role of Babu resembles that of Iamba, which we talked about in the Homeric hymn to Demeter, and you can see there, and also connected to the Orphic stories too. By the way, there is a poem to Babu, also mentioned by Clement of Alexandria, that is connected to Orpheus, and it runs as follows. It says, "This said, she drew aside her robes and showed a sight of shame. Child Iacchus was there," which means Dionysus, "and laughing, plunged his hands below her breasts. Then smiles the goddess. In her heart she smiled and drank the draught from out of the glancing cup." So apparently she does drink the wine as a result of her sudden good mood in the middle of morning. Clement even asserts that Orpheus is the originator of the mysteries of Eleusis. But we don't know, right? Babu herself was very much a curious individual, with her name interpreted as meaning either belly or literally that which he showed to Demeter. So be maybe a counterpart to that phallic emblem, possibly, right? But what is important to remember about Babu, and what Clement of Alexandria does not mention, and probably intentionally in order to provide more of a force for his accusation of sexual improprieties, is that she was intended to be a rather pleasant and fun character whose story served to relieve the mourning of the Mystae and provides a necessary mood change for the celebrants, moving from sadness to joy, initiates or now suddenly feeling some happiness, some joy. They're laughing with Demeter, right? Wow. And then this is where other scholars will then say they drink the kykion at this point, the barley drink. So this is where they say this. So we're almost done. Okay, so yeah, thank you for being here. So now we got the of things that are said, the logomena, right? Here at Eleusis, the most famous is the formula of the Eleusinian Mysteries mentioned by Clement of Alexandria. And of course, we heard this. "I fasted, I drank the draught, I took from the chest. Having done my task, I placed in the basket, and from that basket into the chest." Okay, well, okay, so, but what are the things that are shown? Here we are. What are the things shown? Remember, you're not supposed to tell anybody. What are the things that are shown? So of course, everybody's going to say what they saw. The contents of this chest have been variously described. The Latin Christian Tertullian, because remember, what will happen is many Christian apologists believe that by revealing the mysteries, it loses power. So they're not just making things up out of the hat. And many of them were originally initiates of these mysteries before they converted to Christianity. But they're wanting to reveal them because they want to give away the secrets, because they feel like this empowers it, whatever. But you do have some pagan sources, we'll mention them too. So the Latin Christian Tertullian believed that the entire secret token of their tongues is revealed to be an image of the male organ, so that the image in the basket is a phallus symbol, right? He mentions this. He says Theophrastus refers to, quote, the tools of grinding corn that early man consigned to secrecy and encountered as something sacred. Well, this could be that, but it also could be a mortar and a pestle. that were hidden in the basket, maybe not a phallic symbol, which is, of course, is used for grinding the grain and for preparing the kykion, right? Remember the drink we just talked about? Okay, so that's a possibility. But then again, we find others talking about this beyond Tertullian, that it was a phallus symbol that was in there. So let's keep on going. Hippolytus believed that an ear of grain was revealed to the initiates, as told by him by a certain Nassim. So now you have this idea that no, it's an ear of corn that is shown. And it actually goes into a very long description of what that was about. So, and which is, I find is interesting. It says, these, he says, are the inferior mysteries, and these appertaining to the carnal generation, yada, 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 yada. So there you have that. Okay. Now, Clement of Alexandria also mentions that, so Clement of Alexandria mentions that the basket, so we have Tertullian, right? We have Hippolytus. Clement mentions that the chest contained sesame cakes, a pyramid and spherical cakes, cakes with many navels, also balls of salt, and a serpent, and the mystic sign of Dionysus Bessarius. They also contained, wow, a lot in this chest. He heard pomegranates, fig branches, fennel stalks, ivy leaves, round cakes, poppies, as well as symbols of gay Themis, majorum, a lamp, a sword, a woman's comb, which of course, by the way, which is a connection to a woman's secret parts, he says. So he says that actually. So the comb represents the yoni of women. Okay, so to add to this confusion, there's a lot of things in that basket. Seneca is our answer. You're going to love this. You're going to love this. It's all worth the wait and the pain, right? Of this. Seneca has an answer to this question. So you go, well, what in the world is in that basket? What do they show? Tell me, Dr. Rietveld, what do they show? Because there doesn't seem to be any agreement. Do they even know? Seneca divulged the fact that those who revealed the holy objects often varied what they showed because they wished to give the initiates some new experiences. He says, there are holy things that are not communicated all at once. Eleusis always keeps something back to show those who come again. So the answer to the question is, what's in the basket? The answer is all of them at different times. You can see them going, whatever you do, don't tell anybody what's in that basket. Shh. And it turns out to be a comb or a mortar and pestle or a phallus symbol, No, shh, don't tell anybody. And they know pretty much that they're going to go ahead and tell everybody. And then, of course, the other initiates go there and they see something different. And then they go back down to the hill, talk to the buddy, and says, "Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, absolutely. It was a comb." It's like, no, it wasn't a comb. It was and all of a sudden they start fighting one. So it's a great way of keeping secrets. Wonderful, smart. Now, here we go. We're at the very end here, my friend. All right. The atmosphere within the telestrium constantly changed, with both thrills and chills. Aristides notes, within this hall, the mystics were made to experience the most blood-curdling sensations of horror and the most enthusiastic ecstasies of joy, right? Unquote. The initiates had to be worked up so as to become worthy of their final revelation. He continues, but their procedure is like a Bacchic frenzy, like the leap of a man mad or possessed, the attainment of a goal without running the race, a passing beyond reason without the previous exercise of reason. For the sacred matter or contemplation is not like attention belonging to knowledge or an outlet of the mind, nor is it like one thing in one place and another in another. On the contrary, to compare small and greater, it is like Aristotle's view that men, being initiated, have not a lesson to learn, but an experience to undergo and a condition into which they must be brought while they are becoming fit, according to Sneasius Deo. Ooh, that is so good, right? So our focus is so much on special knowledge, right? On the contrary, it's not about a lesson to learn, but an experience to undergo, a condition to be brought into. Wow. Now, just prior to the final vision of joy, the initiates were forced to feel the greatest fear. In the most sacred mysteries before the scene of the mystic visions, there is terror infused over the minds of the initiated, says Aristides, excuse me. So you scare them first, these poor people, right? Okay. But then the most awe-inspiring and transformative moment of the Eleusinian Mysteries occurred when the initiates entered the inner sanctum and beheld a great light, megaphos. They were called to this epiphany by the Hierophant, sounding a type of gong used to initiate the sound of thunder in the Greek theatrical performances. It's bong, bong, bong. Plutarch mentions this pinnacle occasion in the rites, comparing it with the initiation into philosophy. Okay, well, tell us, Plutarch, what is it like? He says, just as persons who are being initiated into the mysteries throng together at the outset amid tumult and shouting and jostle against one another, but when the holy rites are being performed and disclosed, the people are immediately attentive in awe and silence. So too at the beginning of philosophy, about its portals also you will see great tumult and talking and boldness, as some boorishly and violently try to jostle their way towards the repute it bestows. But he who has succeeded in getting inside and has seen a great light, as though a shrine were opened, adopts another bearing of silence and amazement, and humble and orderly attends upon reason as upon a god. Whoa, okay, it's a big moment. What the initiates exactly saw is a mystery, but there are many clues connected to reports of Apollodorus and Hippolytus. So we do have those clues. And of course, the idea is the Mystes see some form of core who is called up by the Hierophants by the stroke of this gong. So the underworld, in a sense, then opens up, and this terror then gives way to this sense of joy. Then at that point, the Hierophant announces a divine birth. And of course, everybody else is experiencing that rebirth too, and declares the mistress has given birth to a sacred boy, Brimo de Brimas. Finally, he displays perhaps an ear of corn cut in silence. Now the Mystes saw an image of Kor, as I said, and we do have a papyrus fragment that survives from Milan. It depicts Hercules stating of the Eleusinian Mysteries as follows. He says, I was initiated long ago. Lock up Eleusis, Hierophant, and put the fire out, Dodicus. Deny me the holy night. I have been already initiated into the more authentic mysteries. I have beheld the fire whence I have seen Kor, which is Persephone, the maiden, the mistress. Wow. And also, Sophostras says as follows, if it has been properly corrected, I should say, he says as follows that that there is this light that shows that is transformative in many ways. So you have this great light, you have this great fire that's connected at this great moment of rebirth. So this is an apotheosis, right? Apotheosis gives me a fire. Also, there's a badly damaged relief of Demeter sitting enthroned, while beside her two figures hold out torches towards a cowering child. And so once again, you're going, wait, the cowering child, what does that represent? Fire, child, wait a second, the story we heard earlier. Yes, remember, way back when, that story of the old lady, the old Cretan lady, what does she do? You know, she becomes what? A nurse to the baby, the boy, and what does she do? She does the fire to transform that baby, that child, into an immortal. And so you are participating in that with that child. You are becoming immortal. Isn't that great? See how he had to wade through all the other mysteries to finally fully understand what is going on here. Right? Well, what a day. Well, the following day, that was a big day. After various celebrations, including dancing, the new initiates partook of the sacrifice of the piglets and a large bull, by the way. That was part of the grand feast because they need some food. After this, 2 large vessels were filled to the brim with liquid, one facing east and the other west. At a certain given moment, these 2 vessels were poured out as libation, as a priest again declared, "Kai, Kai, reign, conceive, reign, conceive." This ritual occurred on the 23rd of September, the last day of the mysteries. Whew. Through the various symbolic and mythological representations, the Eleusinian Mysteries revealed to the Greeks and barbarians alike that there is life from death, hope from the hopeless depths of Hades. The Homeric hymn to Demeter declares, "Happy is he among men who has seen these mysteries, but he who is uninitiated and who has no part of them has no claim ever on such blessings, even when departed down into the moldy darkness." Sophocles states in the fragment from his Chitalamus, "Thrice blessed are those mortals who have seen these rites and thus enter Hades. For them alone there is life, for others all is misery." An inscription from Eleusis states as follows, "Beautiful indeed is the mystery given us by the blessed gods. Death is for mortals no longer an evil, but a blessing." Pindar writes, "Blessed is he who has seen these things before he goes beneath the earth, for he understands the ends of mortal life and the beginning of a new life given of God." Perhaps understanding the mysteries of Eleusis will shed light on the passage where in the Gospel of John it records Jesus as saying, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains by itself alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." Wow. So there you have it, right? Wow. In fact, early in the 4th century, Porphyry provides his own reasons why these mysteries were viewed as so important. He says, "But most theologians say that the name of Persephone is derived from nourishing a ring dove, for the ring dove is sacred to this goddess. Hence also the priests of Maya dedicate to her a ring dove, and Maya is the same with Persephone as being a nurse, for this goddess is terrestrial, and so likewise is Demeter. To this goddess also a cock is consecrated, and on this account those who are initiated in her mysteries abstain from domestic birds. In the Eleusinian Mysteries, likewise, the initiated are ordered to abstain from domestic birds, from fishes and beans, pomegranates and apples, which fruits are equally defiling to the touch. So apparently you're going to have some abstinence from certain foods for a little while there. As for further details of the mysteries of Eleusis, they're apparently not divulged, although I gave away a lot. What do you think? Plato notes, "The founders of these mysteries had a real meaning and were not mere triflers when they intimated in a figure long ago, that he who passes unsanctified and uninitiated into the world below will live in a slough, but that he who arrives there after initiation and purification will dwell with the gods. For many, as they say in the mysteries, are the thrices bearers, but few are the mystics. Wow. So, in conclusion, as apparent from this study, the Eleusinian Mysteries were widely accepted throughout the Greco-Roman world. To receive initiation into the rites of Demeter was both a privilege and a mark of distinction. The universalistic appeal of the cult attracted commoners who could afford it and emperors alike. Furthermore, commitment to a particular lifestyle was not required. One could be initiated, receive the promise of a happy afterlife, and live without any worry of ascetic restrictions after the initiation was over. In a sense, the Eleusinian Mysteries brought people together. Thank you so much. We survived. We got through the initiation. Boy, we certainly got through a lot. I feel like I've gone up the hill, went to Eleusis, fought a great battle, and came back down the hill in more ways than you know. Actually, you know for a fact those ways. So we survived, did we not? And I also gave you everything I promised. So, so how you guys feel? Good? Okay, I'll be off. Thank you.